We've previously done videos on California's S1 and S2, which are two of the most beautiful drives in Southern California. And somebody mentioned, hey, when are you gonna do the S3? And I kind of laughed it off, but thought about it and it's like, I don't even know what the S3 is. So I looked it up, and it's a really short highway that goes from Highway 78, which is right behind me, to Borrego Springs, and the highway is about 12 miles in length in total. But today we're going to explore California's S3, figure out what's on it, what there is to see. Probably going to be a really short video because, like I said, it's a 12-mile highway, but let's take a look and see what we can find on California's S3. California's S highways are designated as county routes and are all located in Southern California. The S3 begins at the junction with State Route 78 and ends approximately 12 miles later in Borrego Springs, California. The highway is part of the Juan Bautista de Anza National Historic Trail, which is a 1,200-mile trail that extends from Nogales on the U.S.-Mexican border in Arizona to San Francisco and is administered by the National Park Service. Well, we're already at our first stop along the highway, and we're only about a quarter of a mile or so down the highway from the 78. Now, most of the highway goes through Anza Borrego State Park, and so we are at a hiking trail, Yaqui Well Trail. Yaqui Well was an important water source for Native Americans and early ranchers in the area. So let's take this trail, find out what there is to see along the way, and see if we can find the well itself. So let's go. At the trailhead, you can get a guide, and along the trail you'll come across markers with numbers on them that correspond to entries in the guide where you can learn about the different things you see while walking this trail. So this is Yaqui Well. Not much in the way of water here. Looks like all the vegetation behind me probably drank all that water up. I don't see any water anywhere, but I'm sure if we would have got here 300 years ago, 200 years ago, even 120 years ago, we probably would have seen some water. Nothing here now, but this was an important water spot for Native Americans and for early ranchers. If we would have been here 120 years ago, this whole area would have been filled with cows. And if we would have gotten here 300 years ago, 400 years ago, this was an important camp spot for the Kumeyaay people. Not a whole lot to see here now. The trail was pretty interesting. The markers along the way really helped. Without the markers, I don't think it would have been really that great of a trail. It was about 1.5 miles total. There isn't a lot of great views from it, and the payoff at the end is some brush, but the markers did help a lot. One thing that was kind of disappointing getting towards the end of the trail is there's some cars like right over here. Like, I guess you could have just driven right up here instead of doing a 1.5 mile hike, but at least you got some exercise out of it. So let's head back on Highway S3 and see what else there is to see. Across the street from the Yaqui Well Trail is the Tamarisk Grove Campground, and it's named for all these trees that are surrounding the campground. These trees are not native to the area. They were planted here in the 1930s. In the 1930s, this was a prison camp, and the prisoners planted these trees. Now, these trees are very water hungry. They drink up to 200 gallons of water a day, and that's probably why there's no water at the Yaqui Well currently, or no groundwater. It's because these trees are pulling out a lot of water. They're pretty invasive to the area, but they've been here since the 1930s. The campground itself looks pretty cool. There's cabins all throughout it, lots of tent spots, and while we're filming this, it's a holiday weekend, and the campground is not full, so probably a good place to go camping. Less than a mile onto the highway, the elevation starts to climb, and you start to get some amazing views of the desert below. Less than 2 miles after the start, we reach the S3's high point and the road flattens out. Our second stop on the S3 is about 2.5 miles from the beginning, and it's the William L. Kenyon Overlook Trail. And well, it's our planned second stop, but looking around, we're not exactly sure where the trail is. There's not much of a marking here, so we're gonna look around and see if we could actually find the trail. and hopefully we're on the William L. Kenyon Overlook Trail soon. Otherwise, we're hitting back on the road. So it looks like we found the trail. At least I hope so. There's a line of rocks here. So let's hope this is the trail, and we'll see what kind of overlook we get here at the William L. Kenyon Overlook Trail. So we've made it to the William Kenyon Overlook, and I guess the old saying's true: when in doubt, follow the line of rocks, or something like that. So yeah, we've got a pretty spectacular view from up here of the valley below, and there's a plaque honoring William Kenyon, and there's also an informational sign here. But this was actually a really short hike. We could see the car from here. It's probably like a, I don't know, quarter of a mile up here. It was uphill, but nothing really bad at all. But yeah, let's take a look. Apparently this is a really good area to look for bighorn sheep. In all the times I've been out to the Anza Borrego Desert, I've never actually seen any bighorn sheep. Maybe today's the day. Somehow I doubt it though. But I'm gonna look around and see if I can find any. Well, unfortunately, no bighorn sheep today, but I'll keep looking as we continue to drive. So let's head back to the car and continue exploring California's Highway S3. Throughout the Borrego Springs area, you could find the artwork of Ricardo Braceta, which are these giant metal statues behind me, and they are everywhere in Borrego Springs, including right off the S3. Right over there, there are some woolly mammoths or some elephants. I see some dinosaurs off in the distance. There's an eagle back here, these horses. There's horses everywhere. I think some of the better Ricardo Braceta statues are not located off the S3. You have to actually go into different parts of Borrego Springs to see them, such as the giant sea serpent, which I think is probably the most impressive statue out here, but still pretty cool to come across these statues anytime you're in the Borrego Springs area and check them out. When I mentioned that these statues can be found all throughout Borrego Springs, I mean there are actually well over 100 of these statues around. And we visited Ricardo Braceta's workshop about a year ago, and I'll put a link to a video we did on that in the description, and I'll also put a link to a video that Oddity Odysseys did on the statues here in Borrego Springs in the description as well if you want to know more about the statues here. So let's continue on the S3. The S3 ends here at Christmas Circle in Borrego Springs. Christmas Circle is named for Salvador Ignacio Linares, who was born near here on Christmas Eve in 1775. And it's a pretty neat little park. There's a lot of benches to sit around, just kind of enjoy the day. There's some restaurants across the street. The Borrego Art Institute is right across the street, as well as the Borrego Sun newspaper offices. And there's even a little boba stand set up over here where you can buy boba if you want. But yeah, this is Christmas Circle, and it's the end of the S3. So that's California's S3. To be honest with you, unless you're in the area, I wouldn't go out of my way to go on the S3. There are some pretty impressive views, but some of the other highways in the area have even better views. They have better hikes that you can go on. And I mean, it's only a 12-mile highway, so there's not a whole lot there. But if you're in the area, it's definitely worth a small detour to take the S3 and just see what there is to see on it. But thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and we'll see you next week.